Hi everyone, Scott Pyre, Pop Cult fan here. I just saw the season 2 finale of Percy Jackson and the Olympians for season 2, and I'm ready to do my full review of this show and its second season. So, Percy Jackson, the novels, I remember reading them when I was younger in elementary school and middle school. And, I liked the movies, even though obviously those movies had a lot of problems, too many changes to the original source material. And, when season 1 premiered, like at the end of 2023, I was like, wow, this is actually really good. This is really solid television. And it was a first season of a young adult series of novels that we've never really had before in television format. And I loved Percy Jackson for that when season 2 premiered, or when season 1 premiered at the end of 2023. And this season 2, was a really great follow-up. I think Walker Scoble, he really embodies the role as Percy Jackson, and his kind of portrayal of the character definitely has that same kind of wit that Percy Jackson does in the books, and some of the comedic lines of dialogue that he sometimes has as Percy, definitely in line with the Percy Jackson that we have in the books. And that's what I love about this version of the character. And of course, the actress that plays Annabeth and Grover, I've grown to really get attached to these casts of actors playing these characters, and I think that they're better in the roles than what we got with the movies, if you ask me. Granted, I mean, don't get me wrong, I thought Logan Lerman was decent in the role, and Alexandra Daddario as Annabeth in the movies. I mean, she was decent too. I mean, the actors were decent in the movies. It's just that, those movies weren't great. But yeah, so in regards to performances, I would say the lead role of Percy, played by Walker Scoble, I think he gave one of the better performances this season, as well as the actress that played Clarice. I thought what they did with her character this season really helped humanize Clarice quite a bit compared to how the character is in the books. Because in the books, she's a little bit like kind of, in a way, like Draco Malfoy. She's kind of like Percy's Draco Malfoy in this particular series of novels. Clarice is kind of like Draco Malfoy in the books. But, here they do a lot more with her character. She feels a lot more like a character that you can sympathize with compared to how it is in the books. And with what they do, I think was definitely kind of a redeeming kind of journey for her to go through this season, and I really appreciated what they did there. And of course also Luke's arc throughout the season as well, and how this one flashback from before the events of season 1 kind of was very relevant to Luke's story as well as Annabeth's this season. Without spoiling anything, I think there's this one particular flashback that we keep going back to in regards to how Luke and Annabeth originally got to camp before the events of season 1, and with how they handle that and how it ties back into the story with the Golden Fleece, I think is really fascinating. And I remember seeing the film, the City of Monsters film, and there's this one particular detail with Grover's story in the original book that I kind of forgot about from watching the movie. And when that played out, it was so much better here. It was so much better compared to the movie. So much better in every way. Like, there's this one particular storyline with Grover that I almost forgot about from the novel and the movie, that was handled so much better. It really was. And, I love Grover. I love the actor playing Grover in this show. And what they were doing there as well was also surprisingly really well done. I think the CGI is definitely improved from season one. It's a lot better here with some of these kind of like bigger like cyclops monsters and stuff. Like, that was one of the things I was worried about with this season. I was a bit concerned with how they were gonna do the one eye on Tyson. Like, I was a little bit concerned about that, but once we got to Tyson's character in the first episode of this season, I was like, oh wow, this actually it looks decent for CGI. Basically creating the one eye for Tyson as a Cyclops, and I thought that was surprisingly well done with what they did there. And then also, another thing that I mentioned about what happened at the beginning of this season, the chariot race. The chariot race, that particular action sequence was really well handled. I thought some of the action sequences felt better and bigger this season compared to season one. You can really tell that this season has a bit of a higher budget compared to season one in regards to the effects, the action sequences, and even like some of the more brutal scenes that you get this season. Definitely feels like there's a lot more weight to it in regards to depth and performances from the actors and some of the stunt work involved. It was all really well done. And speaking of the chariot race, there's this one scene by the end of that sequence that kind of made me think of a really old horror film that I'm not going to name because it could be a little bit spoilery, but that's all I'm going to say. It reminded me of this one really old horror film, really old, that I don't want to mention because it could. So yeah, there's that. Just so many great moments. The chemistry between Percy and Annabeth this season was off the hook, pun intended, and I really like them as their relationship continues to, blossom as the show continues, and it's just really sweet and cute for these teenagers basically on the show, and see how that goes going forward into season 3 and beyond. So really good there. And also a little bit of a, not spoiler, but kind of what was addressed in the beginning of season 1 that will continue going forward throughout the rest of the show, is there is a prophecy. And yeah, some people will say that there are some comparisons to be made between the Percy Jackson novels as well as the Harry Potter novels. There is a prophecy, and that is all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. But it was addressed in season 1, and it gets further, developed on this season that I don't want to, say too much about. But it really did make me feel like Percy's story will have parallels to Harry Potter. It just will. So that's what I'm going to say about that, without spoiling anything. But overall, this was a great season. I also really liked the score, too. I thought a lot of the tracks in regards to music was really well handled as well. And, I think the actor that plays Luke, yeah, I think I like him better as Luke than I did with the actor that played Luke in the movies. I do like this actor and his portrayal of Luke a little bit more, because you feel for him in certain aspects. He feels like a kind of an older kind of brother figure to Annabeth, which plays into certain scenes in this season of the show, and you really feel that. So you kind of feel for his character a little bit, while at the same time he's kind of on the bad side. He's on the evil side, and there's something to be said about his arc for the rest of the show going forward. And also in regards to the Titan god Kronos. I don't want to mention too much about him, but with what they were doing this season and how Kronos's return, and especially in regards to the Golden Fleece and how they were, it's basically a MacGuffin. It reminded me of the Philosopher's Stone. I will admit that. Like, in the way that Kronos is trying to return from basically being dead, and the Golden Fleece, Luke trying to get that fleece for Kronos to be resurrected. It reminded me of the Philosopher's Stone, with the first Harry Potter book or movie, you know. So another comparison, but yeah. So really great season. There are some changes compared to the book that I do think were beneficial to the show and what they were trying to do for the show. And I did like most of the changes, but a couple of the changes made from the book were a little bit questionable for me. But other than that, though, really great follow-up to season 1. I loved it. I would definitely give season 2 of this show an A-. That would be my grade for it. A few writing mishaps here and there. I thought the pacing was actually really good. Like, I don't have any issues with the pacing of all 8 episodes of this show. I thought the pacing was actually really good. That wasn't my flaw with the show. It was just, just a few little writing gripes that I have, as well as some of the changes that were made, especially near the end with a certain character that I'm not going to name. But yeah, so overall, great season, A- for me. That should do it for my review of Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 2, Sea of Monsters, and I cannot wait for Season 3. I did see at the end of this finale episode that I believe Season 3 will be happening this year still, because Season 3 was renewed before Season 2 premiered. So it looks like they're fast-tracking Season 3 to avoid a huge gap between seasons. And Season 3, if it's true it's going to be released this year, I would assume around the exact same time as the previous 2 seasons, in December at the end of this year. So really happy about that. I'm glad that the show will be continuing, and that Season 3 will probably premiere at the end of this year, and I'm happy about that. Not too big of a gap between seasons, thankfully. So glad for that. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 2, and let's talk about it in the comments. All right, guys, take care and have a great day. And one last thing, if it's true that there's going to be a trailer for the upcoming Darth Maul show tomorrow, I will do a reaction for that, so look forward to that tomorrow as well. So take care and peace.